one of the schools, when you were trying to educate the children, you were asked to leave the school. Can I know the reason why?
I do a lot of sexual health programs for schools, and so when I was speaking to young children about masturbation, I was asked to leave because I was teaching them how to sin.
Was it a convent school?
Yes, it was. So, and pornography is very dangerous in the current algorithm driven world we live in, because once you exposed yourself to a certain kind of porn, okay, let's say you looked at violent porn, then you're going to constantly keep looking for violent porn, or it will keep feeding you violent porn.
Because of the recommendation.
Right. Autism is again brought under mental illness. They don't want to understand, this is something that has come from your family. Then the karma angle is brought in, etc., etc. So I've seen a lot of very strong, resilient single women who are raising their sons or daughters against all odds, and they're doing amazing work. And I think for me, a lot of those women have been inspirational. I remember one lady, she was a maid, and she had a child with cerebral palsy, and the husband left her. With that small salary that she would get, she would go for his physiotherapy. And that boy has now become like one of those waiters in a hotel. He's doing very well, he's working. The fact is that the mom said, even if I don't have enough, I will do this for my child. And I think that is the kind of woman power that has to be celebrated over a period of time.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very inspirational story, because normally you are wrong, I am wrong, you're right, something or the other is happening, and there is always a conflict. I've seen even separate bedrooms.
Right.
Thank you so much, Aarti, for joining. And Aarti, first of all, what is the subject in which you're an expert?
I'm basically a psychologist, and I work with young children. And I don't specifically say that I'm expert somewhere. I'm a student.
Heard that. I'm a learner.
Yeah, I'm a student of my work. I'm a student of my work, because human beings we're basically unique.
Right.
And so to say that you're an expert at something, it's very, very unfair. Right? To be an expert at something, how can you be an expert when you just met one person? Right? If I met your brother or met your sister, they're going to be completely different.
Right.
So I'm a student of my work.
Right. Moving to your work, what exactly, specifically your core area where you have been? In fact, in your lecture also, I have heard that one of the schools, when you were trying to educate the children, you were asked to leave the school. Can I know the reason why?
Because I was teaching them. See, my topic specifically today at the conference was on sexuality and puberty and things like that, in autism specifically. But I also work with diverse populations. I work with slum schools, I work with village schools, I work with regular schools, because basically I haven't decided that I'm going to work only in one area. Because when you really look at relationships, you're meeting somebody, a young child, you're meeting them for the first time, and you just have to know what needs they have and build that relationship. Right. We have medicalized everything, put them in medical models, and then fit them into categories, and assuming that they can't understand something. So I started that way. But your question specifically, why I was kicked out of school, I do a lot of sexual health programs for schools. And so when I was speaking to young children about masturbation, I was asked to leave because I was teaching them how to sin.
Was it a convent school?
Yes, it was. So it became a problem. But the point is, we need to understand that sexuality is something. See, just like I can feel hungry and I need to know that I can eat this food, this is healthy, and this food that is spoiled, I shouldn't have it. With sexual behaviors also, it's extremely important for you to realize that certain behaviors are okay, certain behaviors are not. And then you have to teach it in a very safe ecosystem, in the most friendly and humorous way, because then what happens is your inhibitions go away. Right? And that's the most important.
So why is education around sexuality so difficult and so, I would say, kept in the dark, or you can say kept as a secret? Why is it? Because it's all natural. We are all born with the organs which we are already possessing. Why are we not accepting the way it is? Because I'm sure the social, the entire social, how it works in a society, and how are the repercussions if you say anything against which has already been set as a rule in the society. So how do you challenge these things? Because your subject is very sensitive, I must say.
Because we've associated shame to it.
Shame.
Right? So with anything, you have certain emotions that are associated. Like when somebody gets an award, you associate emotions like pride, you associate sense of achievement, etc. So it's okay. But let's assume that we live in a society that demonizes that. Then somebody winning an award will hide it, right? They're not going to show it to you. So what is it that we're valuing is very important. So somewhere right in the beginning, I think, the way in which we could control entire populations was to put the fear of God, bring in an element of shame, etc. And I think sex has always been brought under the moral lens when it's actually a plain physiological need. Right? Just like I can feel hungry, I can feel sexually attracted or aroused. And I need to just understand it at that level. And I need to know when I'm hungry, I eat this, right? So when I'm sexually aroused, this is how I can deal with it.
How do you deliver this message? Because when you're hungry, we have food to eat.
Right.
But this is not as straightforward in terms when you have a sexual arousal. How do you address this when, I'm sure that because since we are in a GAC convention, it's specifically to autism, but in a normal scenario also, if I've asked, even in those scenarios, it is a bigger, very big taboo. Yeah.
So we are India and we have the highest population. I don't think everybody was just dropped from the sky, right? We did something to have those children, right? So if we educate better,
Right.
I think we'll actually have safer behaviors, right? You'll understand the need for relational context in that. Okay, and remove these unhealthy romantic associations with it.
What do you mean by unhealthy romantic associations?
Running around trees, right? Standing like that. Like, what nonsense are we teaching our children, right? Romance is something that has been artificially created around relationships. And it's from the heteronormal space, number one. And two, it is also from a very patriarchal lens.
Romance.
Romance, yes. Look at, so if
What
you
makes you
really,
say this?
so there is a huge history, and I'm going to put this away. So there's a huge history around it. So when you look at most of the romance stories, the fairy tales and all that, then they lived happily ever after. There was always a prince and princess and all that.
Yes.
It is from medieval Europe, where if you married into a rich family, then you were safe for life, right? So always the behaviors around courtship, the prince had to chase the princess. She was taught how to. So if you really go back historically, that was the case. And also there's a second aspect to it. Women who were supposed to be family women, to be married, they were not allowed to learn to read and write. Okay,
And
only
that was
the
purposely done.
That was purposely done because she was only supposed to bear the kids. And then you have the concubine who was allowed to go to the library and become intellectual because she had to be the muse. And these were all normalized because marriage in itself was only a wealth exchange. And in wealth exchange, they didn't normalize sexuality. Okay, whereas in the concubine, who was also a sexual muse, it was completely different. So it's a very controversial,
It's a very controversial
space,
topic.
right? Which is why, again, shame and everything. So all
So you're saying that those all things are being adapted by India
Yes.
and they are still running in India.
I won't say, I don't want to do this West versus East and all that. I'm sure in every culture there was some kind of, even now in India, for example, when the girl, why do we have so many schemes that normalize girl child and say that, you
Beti
take
bachao,
care of
beti
those kind of things? Why did they come? Because somewhere we are still stuck in the fact that the boy is somehow more valuable than the girl and things like that. So that's why I'm saying this concept of romance and marriage and all of these things also come from not just procreation, reproduction, all those things, but also wealth exchange, patriarchy, power. So there are a lot of complex things. So when you ask me, how is it that food is not taboo? It's because these factors have not been brought in, right? Pure scientifically. But if I were to work with young children, I just need to help them understand that there is nothing to be shameful about with your own body, right? If we get children to get used to that, then body shaming and all cannot be things. Right? Whether it is about, and that comes from food, right? So we can bring shame in anything that we want to commercialize. So that's basically my take on the whole thing.
And your specific subject was on masturbation, right?
Not necessarily. In fact, then I'm going to become the masturbation expert in the world. Why are you doing this to me?
Is it natural?
It is natural. Now the thing is, now when you're hungry, you know how to self-soothe. Right? So let's say you're hungry before lunch and you know your lunch is going to be delayed. You'll probably have a snack, right? Masturbation is like that.
So what if there is addictive patterns because suddenly you are hitting the dopamine receptors, you are having those, pleasure circuits, opening up and you want to revisit that. So the entire, because I think the dopamine receptors was primarily because of the hard work which you do. And once you have done the hard work and kind of you're a little idle and you have no work to do, that's when your mind hovers here and there. That's when there are some things which happen and then you're like, oh, I did so much of hard work and I'm giving the same thing. Here I don't have to do hard, but I'm getting the same pleasure.
No, but dopamine, your question is slightly, I would reframe it because it doesn't mean that hard work gives you dopamine.
Okay, what gives you?
Dopamine is it's part of the reward mechanism.
Right.
And no matter what you do, the amount of dopamine secreted is different. So we are talking about the dopamine high in your case. Okay, but even if I do like casual work, some amount of dopamine will come in.
Okay.
So it's not that hard work brings dopamine. Hard work brings higher doses of dopamine. But since the advent of screens, the dopamine hit can come from the law of least effort.
Yes.
Law of least effort, you do nothing, you can still get a dopamine high.
Right.
That's how it is. But when it comes to sexuality, it's not just dopamine.
Right.
There's also a component of testosterone, you have estrogen, you have progesterone, there is serotonin in a large level. So there are a lot of other chemicals also. I wouldn't simplify it to that. But your question specifically is what happens when there is usage. Just like gluttony in food, right? You just need to figure out how to reduce
How
that
much is
behavior.
too much?
How much is too much is a very, very personal question.
Okay.
Right? But also where I normally teach people is reduce anything that distracts you, restrict anything that addicts you. Right?
But again, there's no number to it.
So what happens is now, like you earlier said, when people are bored, when they're not being, stimulated sufficiently, they're going to choose something that's going to be pleasurable, right? So that is where I need to step in and say, okay, what are the things I can do so that I keep myself occupied? The current generation, especially after 2009, because we've become very screen driven, if we don't have a screen, we don't know what to do.
Correct.
But my generation, when we were growing up and stuff like that, we had a million things we could do, right?
Our first takeaway was that if we go out,
We could.
we used to play.
Right? I could climb trees, I played sport, we had theater, everything. Now everything is about Instagrammable. Right now I took some pictures there and we took one picture for LinkedIn and one for Instagram and they were completely different from each other.
I see. Okay.
Right? Because in the LinkedIn one was very serious and all. In the Insta we were fooling around. Right? So what I'm trying to...
The context is different.
Different, yes. So ultimately the world that we now inhabit is very visual.
So don't you think that it's very overwhelming to the brain? It is super hyper. I would say that it's very stimulated. Because back in the day, I would say that when the lights were off, then the lights were off. You don't have anything to do. You have to sleep. There's no other alternative. So again, it's going to be a different topic altogether now.
Yeah.
So what I'm the one part is which I want to ask is sexuality. The education of sexuality is different for females and males, or is it more or less same for both?
See, now you'll need to understand that at the foundational level, there are basic behaviors. One is at the level of the reproductive system itself, where you understand the changes in your body, the hormones, how to keep yourself clean, hygiene, all of that. And that is going to be the same for boys and girls because hygiene is something that both of you will keep clean. And for example, for girls, there would be menstruation as an additional component and boys need to understand what menstruation is. Right. So that would still remain the same.
That is still not, there's no education around that also.
Yeah, but it's required. And if you notice, we've started all of these. Then for boys, we teach them about wet dreams. We talk to them about masturbation.
Nightfall.
And those kind nocturnal emissions as we call them. So we have to educate them about it because we again build shame there, right?
So the only education which men get from is from pornography.
Right.
Because I think that's where they have an idea about how sex happens.
Right. And pornography is very dangerous in the current algorithm driven world we live in because once you exposed yourself to a certain kind of porn, okay, let's say you looked at violent porn, then you're going to constantly keep looking for violent porn or it will keep feeding you violent porn.
Because of the recommendation engine.
So the thing is, some people do believe that porn helps people, etc., etc., etc. See, now again, these are all very relative questions, right? Earlier, if you notice, the access to porn was not so much.
Magazines was there, CDs was there.
Yeah, so CDs. So if you knew where to go and access a CD and you watched it and stuff like that, it was fine. Otherwise, it was the soft porn of the romantic movies and all of those things. That's the max you would get. And if you watched an Indian movie, you will have to just let your imagination run wild because somebody ran around a tree or two sunflowers kissed each other or something. And I'm sorry, man, but that's how it was. You had to sort of build, oh, kuch ho raha hai yahan pe kind of thing. Right. But what I'm trying to say now is that you have easy access on a handheld device and it's many of
Click
these,
of a button, it's coming.
Right. And if you do that once, it will pop up enough number of times for you to find additional sites and everything. And now you also have a lot of interactive porn. In terms of porn, very simply put, it's not about beneficial, not beneficial. Some people benefit from it. Okay. And anything in moderation, optimal use is healthy, right? It's only when it becomes obsessive, it becomes a problem. But I would like to just disagree with one part of what you said, which is that sex education can happen through porn. It's better.
I must say that this was the only reference.
Reference point, yeah.
First of all, there was awareness. that there's an education by the name sex education. So that came to us very late.
Right.
Like,
No, actually, the thing is, in India, we are very, very hypocritical.
Yeah.
Right? We think that we can learn on the job kind of thing. And with sexuality, sex education, things like that, it's very important that we have a trusted adult we can go back to, especially because we've functioned in a very heteronormal culture, right? We've normalized
heteronormal culture.
heteronormal because we believe that only a man can like a woman kind of thing. We are not looking at gender differently. We're not looking at orientation differently. We're very biased towards certain things. We associate everything to, our culture and all those things. But if you really look at mythology also, right from Shikhandi, we had models for everything. In India, we do have models for everything.
Right.
But the only thing is, it has to be looked at in the right perspective, which is why I started my session with that story, where brahmacharya means the right attitude towards sex. Because we have the right attitude, then to look for information in a healthy form will be a natural part of what you do, right? And we're not doing that. We're looking for it in the most unhealthy possible ways. So that's where I would make a change, right? So coming to porn, I would not allow it to be an educational tool. Educational tools must be in the presence of a trusted adult who has the right kind of information. Because then what happens is, because it's not only sex, I can be attracted to somebody, right? I start masturbating, okay, because that's what I probably will daydream.
Is that the healthy way of masturbating? One of the
Different people use different techniques.
So imagination.
Imagine, so that is what we call the default mode of the mind. Okay, and
What is the most healthy way to masturbate?
there is no most healthy, as long as you are not hurting yourself, it's fine. So it's the simplest way to understand it, because it's what
But
is.
if you're watching porn, then obviously your brain would want to.
No, some people will watch and then assist that with.
So there's a movie by the name Don John. I don't know whether you've
I
seen
haven't
that movie.
seen it. I'm not really a movie person, so I
in
wouldn't know.
in that movie, the person dated the hottest chick
Okay.
in his entire group. He used to have his intercourse with the girl, and after that, he had this urge that I did not get that high, so he goes to porn, he watches the porn, he gets that high, he masturbates, and then he sleeps.
Okay. It's possible for some people that they do require that extra stimulation.
Is it how do you? So this is a different kind of an urge.
See, now if you look at it in the overall umbrella, now sex in
There's again a
itself,
spectrum, right?
No, sex in itself has 4 stages.
Four
And if you
stages.
don't meet those 4 stages, you're going to feel incomplete.
Okay, please explain.
Oh,
this
now,
first.
well, this has become like a masterclass today. So basically, you start with the foreplay. Okay, and most Indians at least believe that foreplay is almost always only when you're already in bed or something like that. Foreplay can happen for 2 days. Like, even texting.
days?
Yeah, you can text each other, you can send, you build the whole thing.
Okay.
See, libido is an energy, right? So you can build it over a period of time. So the foreplay can go on for 2 days sometimes. And it depends on how, and the more you build that, the relationship becomes more enriched because you're connecting. And see, sex is something that is associated with joy as well. It's not just pleasure, okay? So when you connect with somebody in a very playful way, that's the person you find most sexually attractive.
Right.
Okay, because what happens is when you're playfully teasing somebody and all that, there's a lot of that connect, that very nice
That
oxytocin.
usually happens pre-marriage, I guess. Post-marriage.
See, that is the other aspect of the relationship, which is in the courtship phase. All of us are putting our best foot forward. We're exploring, etc., etc. But you can spice up the marriage later also, right? You can have this playful element all through. But what happens is after some time, you're like, oh, ye to free mein mil rahi hai waise kind of thing, right? So I'm really sorry, I'm saying it so bluntly, but that's how we look at sex, right? So you have been a month. No, but I'm just saying what is true.
Sorry.
It is. We'll get all of this. We'll put you in. We'll put you as the clickbait.
we fought it.
We'll do you clickbait you.
Okay, coming to the second stage.
So basically,
First stage, yeah.
then of course, then you have the actual, then you have the actual intercourse and stuff like that, and then you have the afterplay. After you've actually, so the orgasm is the third phase where you climax together, and then the fourth is the afterplay where you also spend time getting after that you sort of you have some friendly banter. Usually it's also about what transpired and all of that. When you go through all 4, then you had like a complete experience. But very often what happens, we miss out all these other and then
It's
we
a
focus.
last thing
Yeah.
is happening.
So then we are focusing only on the actual act and then the climax, and then like climax is not enough. I need to also see sex, reproduction in itself. If you see, yes, it's a biological need and all that, but we are relational beings, right? And we have decided
need connections.
yeah, we need connections, and that relational aspect of a relationship is extremely, extremely important. And see, we are not. I mean, if you really look at literature and research over a period of time, we are not supposed to be monogamous. We are not supposed to be monogamous.
Yes,
but
yes,
the
yes.
point is, for the sake of society, these rules have been laid out.
Right.
So it's a person's individual choice how they go about it. And usually, if you do choose one partner and you build several things around it, it moves from a courtship to a slight conflict phase. All good relationships go through it. And then you'll go into companionship. And as human beings, if you really see it, all of us are looking for good companionship. Right? And that I think can happen beautifully if your sexual life is beautifully built. And that's the most important thing.
More or less, I think more or less all the answers have come out.
Yeah.
So one question which I have, a woman choosing the partner, I mean, is it for a lifelong companionship? Because I think the women thinks a lot before choosing the partner.
See, now marriage in itself,
ultimately-
see, now if you're choosing
Let's say
marriage,
it's not even marriage, even if they're going as a boyfriend, girlfriend or a relationship sort of a thing, they will think that this is the most desirable. I think women choose their partner.
which man, which woman, I'll put it that way.
Which man, which
woman, because, you know, to generalize something as an entire gender's choice and all that, I'm personally against it. Because there will be still women who will choose for money, material stability. Okay, no, let's be very, very practical about these things. Let's not, see, sweeping all this truth under the carpet is very dangerous. See, some people will choose from financial viability, right? Some people will choose from the fact of that they want to have children, they want to nurture a family. And, you know, we call them I think they call it was a book in Pulitzer Prize, I think the posterity need or something, where I need to, make a project because I want to live on forever. So when I have children, then I live on forever,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Exact
Through
word
the
I'm not able to
children.
get. Yeah. So I have
On and on and
I
on.
want to leave like,
A
a
legacy sort of a
legacy
thing.
kind of thing. So I make a project, right? So then that person is going to choose likely the dad body, like, somebody who's going to be a great dad. That one won't be attracted with the six pack and all that. They're the
Typically
ones.
see what are the factors which a woman normally look into?
I won't say normally and all. Each one has their
Acha,
own
each
driving
one,
force.
Every woman,
that's why
each woman, each man.
one.
I see.
That's it.
What do you mean by each woman and each man? Because normally,
See, we try to quantify these things and say 70% of women choose this, but that is actually messaging from society.
statistics
Right.
and lies.
Right.
So again, the numbers.
Everybody lies about it, but I'm just telling you, you're choosing like 100%, like 100% sample and saying, okay, what do you want? What do you want? Now, if you did this study in Delhi where you're from, wahan pe, if you did it in South Delhi, it will be different from what you will do in, say, East Delhi.
Now I've stayed in Noida. So
Right, so it's going to be completely different.
different.
You
If
do
we
it in
talk about
Gurgaon, it'll be different. But I'm from Tamil Nadu. Now, for us, intelligence is a very important thing, right? So we'll
you
have
are
to choose.
sapiosexual beings.
Yeah, so we'll have to choose somebody we can intellectually connect with, stuff like that. So those kind of things. So there will be very, very cultural messaging that will be part of it. So I won't say why do women look for and all that. What is that individual thing? So somebody who feels money is something important, they will look for a partner who will be able to meet those needs. Whereas somebody who's very, visually oriented would probably choose somebody who looks very good, great physique, stuff like that. Somebody who has a range of interests will look for somebody who can complement those. So that's why it's a very individual choice. And if we don't use the social messaging, we'll actually do much better.
Only challenge here is that outside this conference, everything is generalized,
Yes.
stereotyped.
Yes.
And I think what things which you're talking about is very archetype, but very, very different. Oh, this is something I wish I could have someone like you.
But if we have idealism, it's never against what we can achieve. Because, it's a great thing to strive towards.
Right.
So that's what I would look at. Because it's not wrong to have something archetypal in mind, right?
That's what I'm saying, that archetypal is something which will break the stereotype. It will give you a different thought process to even think together. Because there's a concept, maybe you're believing your entire life, and suddenly one person and tells you this is all wrong.
Yeah.
So it breaks that myth.
No, I won't say right, wrong. See, that's where you can't go into the polarities.
Okay.
You'll need to somewhere find the grey path.
Okay. A range.
Which and
to
see,
some extent
what
is
I
correct.
wanted when I was 20, I definitely don't want now when I'm almost 50, right? I don't want now. It doesn't even mean anything. So I think it's also very relative. So that's where if you build the companionship, then you can grow with each other and say, oh, this is something I want now. And you can hold space for each other. And that's how relationships are built.
So you're working with children, you also working with parents?
I work with everybody.
So,
yeah, all human beings. Right? Yeah.
Children on the spectrum you're working with,
Yeah,
right?
so-
And children on the spectrum and specifically the parents, have you also discussed, the stories which you get from them, because the child is like this, a lot of stresses around the parents, have the relationship been impacted or have the relationship gotten closer? Have you seen both the cases?
I have.
Huh?
I have.
So some can you give me some instances where you saw a very good story and one story which was
was a
not
little
so good?
painful.
Yeah.
I can give you the first, which is on the negative side of the spectrum, where a lot of moms have actually gone in for legal separations because the father was not supportive.
Okay. What was the reason for him not supporting?
First thing is, in my family, we can't have mental illness. Because the autism is again brought under mental illness. They don't want to understand. This is something that has come from your family. Then the karma angle is brought in, etc., etc. So I've seen a lot of very strong, resilient single women who are raising their sons or daughters against all odds, and they're doing amazing work. And I think for me, a lot of those women have been inspirational. I remember one lady; she was a maid, and she had a child with cerebral palsy, and the husband left her. With that small salary that she would get, she would go for his physiotherapy. She would do so much, and that boy has now become like one of those waiters in a hotel. He's doing very well. He's working. Right, and it was all because she chose to do that. Of course, many people pitched in to help, but that's not the important story. The fact is that the mom said, even if I don't have enough, I will do this for my child. And I think that is the kind of woman power that has to be celebrated over a period of time, right? We glamorize woman power, but actually the real power is there. That would be the kind of thing. I've also seen the other extreme where parents have taken turns to work with the child. So when the father was, this is a particular couple where both of them were doing medicine, a mother and father in a medical college, and they had the child very early. And then when they realized that there was a lot of challenge and stuff like that, the father, when he was doing his PG, the mother took a short break, worked with the child. She was doing her bit, and then when she went for her PG, he took over that role. And they were balancing career, child, their own needs. And I think for them, they've been really great advocates for the families and stuff like that. Even today, I met a couple, they both have attended the conference. Each one has their own perspective. So the mother is looking into 1, 2, 3 areas, the father is looking into 2, 3 areas, and then they're putting it together. And I thought that was a beautiful way to model something. So for me, every time I meet parents, I'm actually inspired.
Yeah, this is a very inspirational story, because
Yeah.
normally you are wrong, I'm wrong,
Right.
you're right, so something or the other is happening, and there is always a conflict.
Conflict.
I've seen even separate bedrooms.
Right.
Like I would say it's called silent divorce. You're living in the same room, but you're
No,
not
but you can have separate bedrooms even as a healthy sign,
sign, okay.
when you're
For
giving
your
each other
space.
space, because you don't need to be breathing down each other's neck 24 hours, right? Like, I'm just being very practical here. See, you can still see sometimes space builds togetherness, right? In Tamil Nadu, we have this Adi Masam, 1 month where the girl goes away to her mother's house, and when she comes back, there's a lot more bonding that happens, because that space actually creates togetherness.
What about the husband? How does he also gets the space?
He's in his mother's house, she's in her mother's house. So they sort of, of course there were no phones and all that. So they would have actually longed for each other. Right. Now they probably like micromanaging each other. But, jokes apart, what I'm trying to say is it also builds a lot. They have a lot of other reasons saying that, if you have a child, if you conceive a child at that time, it's born in summer and it's very difficult and stuff like that. I don't look at it from that side. From the psychological angle, it also,
because anybody who's a science student will always
look for something else. So absence makes the heart grow fonder, no? So I look at it from there. But you have to be very careful it doesn't become out of sight, out of mind.
Okay. So I think there is so much to I guess there's so many things which I can actually we can reconnect on discussing.
Sure.
Because I think I'm just tip of the iceberg. She's got a wealth of knowledge. Yeah. So thank you so much, Raven, once again.